Tyler, Standifird here, and I grabbed Andrew Mitchell. You can see this beautiful backdrop of his at the University of North Carolina to chat with him a little bit about some of his experiences with some of the training that he's done with SuperSpeed and also his own experiences using it as a user himself. So Andrew, you just kind of, again, beautiful backdrop there in North Carolina. Tell us a little bit about your role there.
Yeah, so I'm an assistant strength conditioning coach in Olympic sports at UNC here. Primary sports I work with are baseball, lacrosse, rowing, and golf. So I got connected with UNC after working with Elon previously this year, as well as working with the baseball team over the summer, and was able to come in this fall and step right in and fill a position. So it's been good.
There was something we talked about at a previous conversation that I loved where because we get a lot of questions from people about how to incorporate like this high velocity training with the speed sticks with some of the other traditional strength training for the higher force production outputs. And I loved the way you talked about kind of days you spend maybe focusing on more strength and then some really specific days of velocity. Can you just maybe touch on that?
Yeah, so if you follow like a vertical integration approach, meaning that you typically have a power speed block, a strength block, and then like an auxiliary accessory block, you usually want to put your max velocity work in that first one, the power speed block. So when I first started with SuperSpeed, I saw that was like the easiest entry point. I would use all three sticks, green, blue, and red, and work my way up to a sustainable maximum velocity. And then I would use that as power work, such as anyone would use, vertical jump training or Olympic weightlifting. I counted that as my max effort, max velocity work that then warmed me up to be, prepared for max squat or max deadlift and that strength block afterwards. And so that's how I got it involved in my training. And then as I dove deeper into the numbers, I saw that there's maybe an opportunity to have a greater spike in velocity and in ball speed. So what I did from there is I divided up my training to have strength-based days that would live on their own without power or speed being involved. And then once or twice a week, my training was strictly dedicated to the SuperSpeed protocols and making sure that I could absolutely max out velocity without having to worry about, that dipping into any time with strength training or possibly, being affected by my timeline or my other exercises I may have going on. And that's the way I've been training now for probably the last 3-4 months. Strength training is on its own on 2 to 3 days a week. And then the other 2 to 3 days a week, it's either at the range, trying to hit balls as far and as hard as I can, or just in the gym or out here on the football field, swinging with intent and with maximum intent until the velocity drops off.
Yeah, I love that because, again, I think, we've got guys who want to do some workouts in the gym. And I think the way you found this ability to just kind of really separate those a little bit and focus on each ends of that force velocity curve. And I know Andrew is experiencing benefits because just before I hit record here, he had mentioned that he's climbing up into the 370, 380 range on those drives and 200-mile-an-hour ball speeds. And so he's getting some legit benefits. So that's great to share. Explain maybe just some of your thoughts on the importance of at least some kind of both dominant and non-dominant side training, maybe both for strength and for velocity.
Yeah, so working with athletes at UNC, we get a lot of guys and ladies here who ask about, should I do more on my non-dominant side or more on my dominant side, especially, if it's a tennis player or a golfer, someone who's constantly going to use one arm more than the other. And the analogy we always use with them is think about how fast you would drive your car if you didn't trust the brakes, right? So if I'm driving my car and I don't know if the brakes are going to catch or not, I'm not going to let maximum speed happen. I'm not going to push down the accelerator as hard as I can. And that's essentially what your brain does with your body, especially in rotation. If your brain doesn't trust that it can correctly synchronize and fire the muscles on your non-dominant side, it won't let the dominant side fire through. And so you'll see a lot of guys who then that's when their compensations show up, either, early extension, loss of posture, their hands and arms take over, and all of a sudden they think they have a swing problem when in actuality they might have a strength and conditioning problem. And so training the non-dominant side, even just in a warm-up before I dive into, high velocity swings, or even on a squat or deadlift day before I dive into, a heavy lift, warming up the non-dominant side and kind of getting the nervous system to fire up and convincing my brain and my body that the brakes will fire. We can let everything go. It allows me to have greater power outputs, which allows me to lift heavier weight in the weight room, but also kind of take the brakes off and swing faster and get higher ball speeds on the range.
Yeah, and that's great. It's funny. I literally just this morning finished a training with Dr. Kwan at Texas Women's University, where he talked about some of the biggest indicators of swing speed are the ability of that body to decelerate prior to impact, right? And I love the way you describe that, right? We're not talking about decelerations post-impact. We're talking that ability to transfer that angular momentum through the ground, through the legs, and really stop that body in order to pass things through the kinetic chain. I think you've just described that really well.
Yeah, and then, it's not just like the physiological or neurological benefit, but it's also a confidence thing as well. There's a big mental strain on an athlete who's trying to reach max velocity and trusting their joints and trusting their muscles to do their job and keep them injury free. And so I think it would benefit every athlete if they focus a little bit more on their non-dominant side. They'd probably see that they can take the brakes off of almost everything they do and move a little more freely. Maybe those mobility hitches they have kind of let go a little bit. And you just see your athleticism take a huge step forward once you take time to make that non-dominant side better.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate the time today, Andrew. I'm kind of in my lab here at Utah Valley University testing things on plates and stuff. And so I love the idea of getting with people who are out there interacting with the athletes, using it themselves, really kind of seeing that kind of practical approach. And, what a cool backdrop to be able to chat with you today. And yeah, guys, Andrew is someone great. I stumbled upon him on Instagram. I think your Instagram handle is Strength Coach Mitchell, if I remember right. So yeah, give him a follow. I think you'll learn a lot of good things about general strength training and kind of follow his goals to become a long drive competitor. So thanks for the time today, Andrew.